Oh, honey, sit right down here on this old wicker chair beside me, the kind that's creaked through more stories than I can shake a stick at. I'm Etta May Harlan, born and bred in this dusty corner of Georgia where the cotton fields stretch out like God's own quilt and the summers hum with cicadas singing their lazy tunes. 82 years young now, if you can call it that, and I've got a tale that's been simmering in my soul like a pot of collards on the back burner, one that starts with a hurt so deep it still makes my chest ache like a fresh bruise. Picture this, it was a sticky August evening in 1969, the kind where the air hangs heavy with jasmine and regret, and I'm standing at the kitchen sink, washing up the supper dishes, humming an old hymn to keep the loneliness at bay. My boy Tommy, my firstborn, with eyes bluer than a Carolina sky, and a grin that could melt butter. He'd been going nigh on a year fighting in that godforsaken jungle over in Vietnam. Letters came sporadic like rain in a drought, telling me about the heat that sucked the life out of ya and the boys he'd bonded with, sharing cigarettes and dreams under them, foreign stars. But that M in the knock came sharp as a switch. The Western Union boy, no more than 16, himself looking paler than milk with a telegram clutched in his sweaty fist. Mrs. Harlan, he stammered out before I could even dry my hands. We regret to inform you your son, Tommy, was killed in action, serving his country. The words hit like a freight train barreling through my heart, leaving nothing but splinters and echoes. I crumpled right there on the worn linoleum floor, the telegram fluttering to the ground like a dead leaf, my wail rising up through the house, raw and ragged as a cat in a sack. Harlan, my husband, he was out back tinkering with the truck, but he heard me and came running, his overalls streaked with grease, his face crumpling when he saw me rocking on the floor, clutching my apron to my mouth to stifle the sobs that wouldn't quit. Tommy, just 21, fixing to come home and marry his high school sweetheart, the one with the curly hair, and laugh like wind chimes gone forever, shipped back in a pine box draped with Old Glory, the flag he'd sworn to defend with his last breath. I could see him in my mind's eye that last morning before he left, kissing my cheek, saying, "Mama, don't you fret. I'll be back before the peaches ripen," telling jokes to lighten the load, even as I begged him not to go. But patriotism ran thick in our blood like sorghum syrup, and he went marching off with the rest of them, the newsreels on the TV blaring about victory and duty, while mamas like me prayed to the heavens for mercy. Now, darling, that heartbreak was just the crack in the dam, the one that let all the sorrows I bottled up come flooding out. But before I spill the rest, let me take you back a ways to when life felt simpler, sweeter, like fresh cornbread straight from the oven. I was a young'un myself during the tail end of that big war, the one they called World War II, when the whole country was pulling together tighter than a fiddle string. Born in '43, right as the boys were storming beaches in the Pacific and tanks were rolling through Europe, my folks had a little spread outside Macon, not much more than a shotgun shack and a few rows of corn, but it was home. Daddy enlisted early, leaving Mama and me to make do with ration coupons and victory gardens, scratching in the dirt for carrots and tomatoes while the radio crackled with FDR's fireside chats urging us to keep the home fires burning. I'd skip down the dirt road to school if the teacher wasn't too busy war working at the factory, dreaming of being like Rosie Rivet in Plains and singing them songs about boogie woogie bugs and praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. We saved tinfoil from gum wrappers and rubber from old tires, feeling like we were part of something bigger than our little plot of Georgia clay. Even as a child, though, there was a whisper of something off something. Mama kept tucked away like her best china in the cupboard. Folks in town would ask after Daddy, saying he's a hero fighting a good fight, but Mama's smile would tighten just a tad. Her eyes darkened to the horizon as if waiting for a ghost. We'd gather with neighbors on Sundays, swapping stories about sons and brothers overseas, the women folk knitting socks for the troops and the men too old to fight whittling sticks on the porch. But at night when the house went quiet, I'd hear Mama patching, muttering prayers or maybe curses under her breath about lies and levens that didn't add up. I was too young to pry, figured it was just the war wearing her down like it did so many. Then came the day the postman brought the bad news about my uncle, not Daddy, but close enough it shook us all. He was lost at sea somewhere off Guadalcanal, the telegram saying presumed dead, nobody, no closure, just a gold star in the window to mark the grief. Mama held me close that night, her tears soaking my pigtails as she whispered, "Etta, life ain't fair, but we Harlans, we endure, we plant our feet and weather the storm." That's when I first tasted resilience, not as some fancy notion, but as survival baked into your bones like the scent of wood smoke in a winter cabin. Oh, honey, if that telegram's shadow still lingers in your mind like smoke from a chimney fire, let's gentle on back to those early days when the world was a tad less jagged around the edges, at least for a wide-eyed girl like me running free on that Georgia farm. After Uncle Ship went down in '43, Mama pulled herself up by her bootstraps, same as every other woman in town, and we dove headfirst into keeping the home front humming. I remember the morning starting before the roosters could crow, her calling me from my feather bed under the eaves, "Etta girl, time to feed the hens and weed the garden." We got liberty on our plates today. We tie on our aprons patched from flour sacks and head out to the coop where the chickens pecked at our ankles, clucking like they owned the place. Wrestling meant no waste, so every egg was a treasure cracked careful into the skillet, fried up with a smidge of lard saved from last week's bacon. Breakfast was hasty oatmeal sweetened with molasses, if we were lucky, washed down with chicory coffee that bit like regret, but kept us going. Mama taught me to stretch every bit, planting beans and okra in rows straight as a preacher's vial, watering them with creek water hauled in buckets till my arms screamed mercy. School was a merry-go-round those war years. Half the time, the one-room building stood empty because the teacher, Miss Hargrove, was off welding ship parts down at the Savannah docks. When we did gather, it'd be me and a handful of kids scribbling on slates, learning fractions and geography while the radio in the corner buzzed with news from the front. I traced my finger over maps marking where the Allies were pushing back, the Nazis dreaming of the day. Daddy'd come marching home with tails taller than a cottonwood. Recess was pure joy, though, racing through the schoolyard playing hopscotch or acting out Rosie the Riveter poses, hammer in hand, hollering we can do it. The boys too young for draft age would strut like soldiers, marching with sticks for rifles, while we girls collected scrap metal from the junk pile, flattened cans with rocks to send off for the war machine. Folks said it made us feel useful and blessed their hearts. It did in that small way, keeping boredom and fear from settling too deep. Evenings brought porch, sitting with neighbors, swapping gossip over mason jars of lemonade, the menfolk whittling corncob pipes, yarn about the good old days before Pearl Harbor turned everything topsy-turvy. But underneath that busy hum, there was always that quiet unease about Daddy, like a pebble in your shoe you couldn't quite shake. Mama'd get letters now and then postmarked from some Army base, but they were thin as tissue, sparse with details, just "I love you" and "Stay strong" signed in his hurried scrawl. I'd pester her, "Read it again, Mama. What's he saying about the fighting?" But she'd fold it away quick as a wink, saying nothing a child needs to fret over, Etta, just pray for peace. I figured it was secrets of war, things too grim for little ears, but looking back now, I see the strain in her eyes, the way she stared at the empty chair at supper, twisting her napkin till her knuckles whitened. Town talk didn't help neither. Old Mrs. Jenkins next door would cluck her tongue, saying, "Heard your man, Earl's unit took heavy fire overseas, hope he's tougher than a pine knot." Mama'd nod polite like sipping her tea, but later I'd catch her out by the clothesline staring at the horizon, muttering under her breath about promises broken and paths not taken. It planted a seed of wonder in me. Why is Mama so sad when everyone else is singing victory songs? But I was busy being a kid, chasing fireflies and braiding daisy chains, so I let it lie. By 45, the tide turned, thank the Lord. The newsreels showed troops storming Berlin and flag raising on Iwo Jima, and our little town burst with hope like fireworks on the 4th. Parades snaked down Main Street with brass bands tooting and kids waving flags handmade from red, white, and blue scrap. I was 7, then marching right along, tossing confetti made from old catalogs, my pigtails bouncing as I hollered, "Give 'em hell, boys." Folks hugged strangers right there on the sidewalk, tears streaming as the war in Europe wrapped up, and then the Pacific too, with that big surrender on the Missouri. But for us, the wait dragged on for Daddy's return, the papers full of VJ Day celebrations, yet our mailbox stayed quiet, save for Mama's thin letters. She threw herself into Red Cross work, knitting more socks than a soul could use, packing care boxes with candy bars and letters from home, her hands never idle. I'd help sometimes stuffing the parcels with doodles and notes, tell Daddy to duck the bullets and come home quick love, Etta. It felt like we were threading hope across the ocean stitch by stitch, keeping our family quilt from unraveling. Then came the day in late 45 when the bus rolled in from the base down south, and there he was stepping off tall and lanky in his uniform, faded from salt and sun. I spotted him first running full tilt down the dirt road, hollering, "Daddy, Daddy," Mama's behind me, apron still tied, wiping her hands on it like she couldn't believe her eyes. He scooped me up, spinning me round till I giggled dizzy, his whiskers scratching my cheek as he laughed deep and true. "Missed my girls more than anything." The whole street turned out with pies and hugs, welcoming him back, a hero in their eyes, medals pinned neat on his chest, stories spilling out about foxholes and liberating towns. Supper that night was a feast ham from the smokehouse, corn on the cob and apple pie with real sugar, no substitutes, the table groaning under the weight. Daddy regaled us with tales cleaned up for tender ears about Buddy's sharing chow and the thrill of seeing the enemy surrender, but his eyes had a far-off glint like he'd left a piece of himself overseas. Mama watched him close, her smile bright but brittle, pouring coffee with a hand that shook just a touch. I was too thrilled to notice much, flopping into bed that night, dreaming of peace lasting forever, our family whole again like a puzzle snapped together. Those post-war years bloomed sweet as honeysuckle, the 40s sliding into the 50s with America roaring back to life like a Model T with a new engine. Daddy took work at the mill fixing machines that spun cotton into cloth, his calluses thick as leather, but his paycheck steady enough for extras like a radio with real music, not just war bulletins. I grew like a weed shooting up to 12, 13, exploring the woods with the neighbor kids, building forts from scrap lumber and telling ghost stories around campfires till the stars wheeled overhead. School got proper again with new books and a young teacher fresh from college teaching us about the atomic age and how we'd won the peace with grit and gadgets. Sundays meant church steeple high and choir singing Amazing Grace, voices rising like steam from the pews, then home for fried chicken and kinfolks gathering on the porch, snapping beans and yarning about the future. Life felt full, darling, the scars of war fading under the sun with drive-ins popping up and soda fountains serving cherry cokes thick as mud. Yet that shadow by Daddy lingered subtle as a summer fog. He'd wake sweating from dreams, yelling orders in his sleep, Mama shutting the door soft to hush him. Or he'd vanish for hours down to the creek with a bottle of shine staring at the water like it held answers. Once I trailed him quiet as a mouse and heard him talking low to himself about a promise to a buddy lost in the mud, swearing he'd make good, but how, Mama, if you knew? It puzzled me, made me hug Mama extra tight, asking, are we okay for real? But she'd ruffle my hair, saying, course we are sugar pie families, what you make it day by day. I believed her mostly lost in my own adventures, saving for a Schwinn bike or sneaking kisses with the boy next door under the mulberry tree. But seeds of secrets were planting deep roots, twisting under the surface, waiting for a storm to unearth them. By my teens, the 50s were in full swing. Elvis wiggling on the TV poodle skirt, swishing, and the world opening wide with promises of college and city lights. I graduated high school in '61, top of my class with dreams of nursing school up in Atlanta, leaving the farm behind for bigger horizons. Daddy beamed at the ceremony, clapping loudest as pride, shining brighter than the diploma in my hand. But home was still my anchor, those suppers with Mama's biscuits flaking perfect and Daddy's jokes crackling like popcorn. We weathered small storms together like the '57 flu that laid us low, or the time the barn burned from a lightning strike, folks rallying to rebuild it higher, stronger. Resilience was our unspoken creed passed down from Mama's Victory Garden days. Bend. Don't break, Etta, that's the Harlan way. Little did I know how those roots would be tested as the calendar flipped to the '60s and new wars brewed on the horizon, ones that ripped families apart worse than any foxhole could. Oh, honey, as those teen years wrapped up like a ribbon on a Sunday hat, I stepped into womanhood full of fireflies and my belly and dreams bigger than the Georgia sky. But life has a way of hitching up the reins when you least expect it. Met my Harlan at a barn dance in '61, him all lanky limbs and grease under his nails from the garage where he fixed Fords and Chevys, his smile crooked as a dirt road, but warm enough to thaw a winter chill. We courted under the stars, showering milkshakes at the drive-in, watching James Dean flick by on the screen, talking about building a life away from the farm lights in our eyes and promises on our lips. Married quick as a jackrabbit in '62, right after I ditched nursing school for a job at the textile mill sewing seams. That'd end up in dresses for city gals up north. Harlan brought home a steady wage fixing folks' rides, and we scraped together for a little shotgun house on Elm Street, the kind with a wraparound porch for sipping lemonade and watching the world go by slow and sweet. Babies came fast as summer rain, first little Harlan Jr. in '63, then the twins Mary and Billy in '65, and my Tommy in '51. Wait, no, darling, let me set that straight. Tommy arrived in '50 full of fuss and that infectious giggle, but time blurs like old photographs anyway. The point is our nest was filling with joy, laughter echoing off the walls, thicker than Mama's gravy. But the '60s, they weren't all twist and shout like the radio crooned the world was churning up trouble again, shadows of war creeping back like kudzu over a fence. By '65, the TV was blaring reports from Vietnam rice paddies turning to mud and boys coming home changed or not at all. Harlan got his draft notice, but a slipped disc from lifting engines kept him stateside. Thank the stars, he worked the assembly line at the plant, pumping out parts for the war machine, while I juggled shifts at the mill, changing diapers with one hand and threading needles with the other. Town felt the strained gas lines snaking long as the river folks hoarding sugar and tires, muttering about hippies and commies tearing the country apart. We'd gather for potluck still, but the talk turned heavy whispers about sons shipped out and protests raging in Washington, the divide cutting deep as a plow through clay. At home, though, we held tight, Harlan teaching the boys to tinker under the hood, Tommy trailing after him, hammer in hand, asking a million questions while the girls baked cookies in Mama's old apron. Life was a juggle, but we made it sing like a bluebird at dawn, resilient as ever bending to the wind, but rooting firm. Then the bottom fell out in ways I couldn't foresee, the first big crack in our foundation showing up quiet as a thief in the night. Mama took ill in '67, her cough turning wet and wheezy, the doctor shaking his head saying it's the lungs from years of dust in the fields and worry eating her from inside. I nursed her in our spare room broth and prayers, her stories flowing weaker each day, but one evening as the sun dipped low, she grabbed my hand, eyes sharp as a hawk's, and spilled the secret that had haunted her since the war. Turns out Daddy wasn't the hero we painted him. He dodged the draft in '42, hiding up in the hills with a bunch of fellas too scared or smart to ship out, leaving Mama to spin tales to the town about his brave letters from the front. She forged them herself, crying over the ink, swearing it was to keep our heads high, no shame in a family of liars. Etta, she gasped, I lied for love for us, but it's rotted me hollow all these years, forgive me, child. I sat there, stunned the room, spinning like a top, my whole childhood unraveling like a pulled thread, the man I'd idolized, the ghost of fraud. Harlan held me that night as I sobbed into his shirt, wondering how truth could hurt worse than any telegram, but Mama slipped away a week later, peaceful in her sleep, leaving me with that burden heavy as a millstone round my neck. That revelation shook me, darling, made me question every story, every smile, but life don't pause for mending hearts and bigger storms were brewing. By '68, Tommy turned 18, that boy with the quick wit and heart of gold singing up for the Marines, patriotic fire burning bright in his chest. Mama's gone, I said, begging him. Stay home, help your daddy at the shop. But he hugged me fierce, saying it's my duty, Etta, like Grandpa's, even if he was fibbing about it all. The irony stung, but off he went bus station farewell with kisses and waves, the twins clinging to my skirts crying, don't let him go. Letters came at first full of bravado, talking about training in the Carolinas, the drill sergeants barking orders and buddies joking to keep the fear at bay. Then they trailed off ship to Nanda jungle, swallowing him whole with tales of heat that cooked ya alive and nights lit by flares and gunfire. I'd pray over his picture on the mantle, lighting candles at church, joining the Gold Star mothers too soon, their faces etched with the same hollow ache. Harlan buried himself in work, coming home, silent grease up to his elbows, avoiding my eyes while the kids grew quiet, the house creaking under the weight of waiting. And then it hit that August night, the knock, the telegram, the world crumpling, as I already told you, Tommy gone in an ambush, his name etched on a wall in D.C. before we'd even buried him proper. The funeral was a blur, town folks bringing casseroles and flags, the preacher talking about sacrifice and heaven's gain, but I was numb inside screaming, why my boy, the one with dreams of fixing planes and raising a family? Harlan broke different, took to the bottle, drowning sorrows, and Jim Beam at the VFW hall, coming home, reeking of regret and rage, blaming the politicians, the draft, the whole dang system. We'd argue something awful, voices raising over the kids' heads and yelling. If I'd told Tommy about his grandpa's cowardice, maybe he wouldn't go on to me snapping back secrets, kill slower than bullets, but they kill all the same. The twins suffered most, Mary shutting in her room, writing poems full of dark clouds. Billy running wild with older boys stealing smokes and skipping school. Susie, our youngest, born in '70, right in the eye of that storm, she was a surprise, a light in the dark, but even she felt the chill growing up in a house cracked like dry earth. The '70s rolled in like a dust storm, peeling on the hurt with economic woes that squeezed us tighter than a corset. Oil embargo in '73 sent prices sky high. Harlan's garage going quiet as folks couldn't afford to drive, let alone fix. He picked up shifts at the factory assembling widgets for exports, but it was back-breaking work, leaving him limping home with a six-pack and a scowl. I sewed extra at the mill, taking night jobs, mending uniforms, stained with sweat and stories, taking in laundry from the richer folks to make ends meet. But the real dagger came in '75 when I found out about Susie's daddy, not Harlan, but a fella from the road crew up north, a one-night comfort during one of Harlan's long hauls away. Guilt ate me like termites in the cells. I buried it deep, figuring love would cover the sin. But with Tommy gone and secrets spilling, I confessed one rainy night, tears mixing with the downpour on the windowsill. Harlan's face went white as a sheet, then red as wrath. He packed a bag, muttering about living for good, the door slamming like thunder, leaving me alone with four walls and a heart in tatters. How do you explain that to kids, darling? How do you say your mama's a liar and your family's built on sand? Those months without him were the piss, pure despair, settling over the house like fog off the river. I worked double shifts, fingers raw from needles, back aching from the loom while the kids fended, mostly Mary cooking mush for supper, Billy getting in scraps at school, Susie toddled around asking, where's Daddy? Her curls bouncing innocent as a lamb, not knowing the storm she carried. Town whispered, bless her heart, Etta's holding on but alone, but charity only goes so far and bills pile like autumn leaves. One evening, the sheriff knocked foreclosure notice in hand, the bank calling our note after Harlan missed payments from his wandering. We packed what we could into the old truck, heading to a rented trailer on the outskirts, tin roof, rattling in the wind, walls thin as paper. Rock bottom, darling, that's what they call it, sitting there in the dark, heating beans on a hot plate, wondering if resilience was just a fool's hope, or if Harlan's really could bend without breaking. The twins rebelled, Mary running off to Atlanta for a spell, Billy joining a gang of roughnecks, joy-ridden stolen cars, his eyes hard as flint. Susie clung to me, her questions piercing. Why is our family broken, Mama? But I had no answers, just hugs and promises I'd fix it somehow. 80s recession hit like a hammer on an anvil, crushing what little we'd rebuilt. Factories shuttered left and right, Harlan dragging back in 82, hat in hand. Sorry as sin, but jobs were scarcer than hen's teeth. He labored odd gigs pumping gas, or Harlan scrapped his pride, chipped away with every no sir. I took to cleaning houses for the bank folks, ironically the ones who tossed us out polishing silver while my own pots went unscrubbed. Inflation ate our savings, groceries costing an arm and a leg gas more precious than gold, the whole country feeling the pinch from Wall Street to Main Street. Community frayed, two neighbors turning inward, soup lines forming at the church basement where once we'd shared feasts, now just ladles of thin stew. One winter the pipes froze in the trailer, bursting water everywhere, us huddling by a space heater that flickered more than it warmed. Billy got arrested that year, boosting a car for kicks, the judge giving him probation, but the shame burned deep, the town seeing our unraveling. Mary came home pregnant, unmarried, the boy long gone, leaving her with a belly full of worry and a mama too tired to judge. Secrets piled higher, Harlan knowing about Susie but not the twins' troubles, or Mary slipped me, carrying them all like stones in a sack, weighing me down till I could scarce stand. Yet in that darkness, a flicker stirred something stubborn, rising up from the Harlan bones. Mama's words echoing, bend, don't break. I joined a women's group at the library talking about hard times and hidden pains, finding sisters in the struggle, showering tears and tips for making do. Harlan and I patched our marriage slow as mending socks, arguments turning to talks, forgiveness creeping in like dawn. But the struggles peaked hard in 87 when the mill closed, laying off half the town, leaving me jobless with mouths to feed. We hit the unemployment line. Harlan's hands idle for the first time in years, his eyes haunted by failure. Susie started acting out, skipping school, questioning her place. Why don't I look like Daddy? She cried, the secret bubbling close to bursting. I nearly cracked, then darling, one night alone in the trailer, staring at Tommy's photo, whispering to the empty air. How much more can one's soul take before it shatters like fine china under a boot? The recession's grip tightened farms, foreclosing friends, moving away the American dream, feeling like a taunt from fancier folks on the TV selling big cars and bigger lies. Resilience tested to the fraying edge. I wondered if we'd snap or if there was light waiting just beyond the bend. Oh, honey, if those dark days in the trailer had me wondering if the Harlan grit was all used up like the last drop in a mason jar, then let me tell you, darling Dawn, don't ask permission to break it. Just creeps in slow and steady, warming the chill away. It started small in the spring of 88 when I mustered the nerve to march down to the community center, that old brick building with the sagging roof, where the ladies met twice a week for quilting and gossip. I'd heard about their circle from a neighbor, bless her heart, the one with the perm and the prayer beads, and figured what the heck, nothing left to lose but my pride. Walked in with my head high, carrying a pie crusty from the oven, my hands still shaking from the night shift at the diner, slinging hash to truckers who tipped in pennies. The women looked up from their needles, faces lined like old road maps, but their smiles wide as the Chattahoochee. Sit a spell, Etta once said, pulling up a chair, her voice thick with that same Georgia drawl that carried us through worse. We shared stories that first meeting, not just recipes, but the real stuff, the husbands who wandered, the kids who strayed, the secrets that festered like boils. I spilled about mama's lie, the draft dodger daddy who left her spinning yarns, and how it had poisoned my own marriage like bad moonshine. They nodded, no judgment, just hugs and hot tea, saying, honey, we all got skeletons dancing in the closet. The trick is letting them out to jiggle in the light. That group became my lifeline, darling threads of sisterhood, stitching up the holes in my heart week by week. We'd laugh over the follies, cry over the losses, trade tips for stretching $1 like hiding bacon bits and beans to fool the young'uns into eating right. One gal, Ruth, her boy lost in Nam, same as Tommy, shared a letter from his sergeant full of praise for the men who'd fought side by side, calling them heroes, not just pawns in some politician's game. It eased the ache knowing Tommy's sacrifice wasn't in vain, that his spirit lived in those bonds forged in fire. Harlan noticed the change in me, coming home lighter-footed, humming hymns under my breath instead of sighing into the sink. He started showing up too at first, hanging back on the porch with a thermos of coffee, then slipping into the VFW meetings where vets swap war stories. No more hiding behind the bottle. Sobriety crept back into him, slow as sap from a pine. He'd apologize for the yelling, the leaving, saying that I was a fool drowning in my own mess when you were the rock holding us afloat. We talked real talk for the first time since the telegram laying bare the resentments, the guilts, till the air cleared like after a summer squall, leaving the rainbow behind. By '89, the recession's clause loosened just a tad, factories hearing again, and Harlan landed a gig at the auto plant assembling engines for the new Fords rolling off the line, shiny as hope. I stuck with the diner but added M classes at the community college, learning accounting figures that danced on paper like fireflies, helping folks balance books without losing their shirts. The money trickled in steady enough to patch the trailer roof and buy the twins new boots for school. No more hand-me-downs with toes poking through. Billy, that wild colt of a boy, turned a corner after the judge's warning, joined the shop class fixing engines under Harlan's watchful eye, his hands getting greasy but his grin returning like the prodigal son. Mary, with her baby girl born that fall, a tiny thing with curls like mine, we named her Grace after the hymn that got us through the nights. The young mother bloomed under our care, learning to swaddle and soothe, while I rocked the babe, telling stories of my own young'uns to ease her fears. No shame in it, darling. We said family fixes what blood don't, just love and elbow grease. That's the American way, clawing back from the brink, stronger for the scars. The real turning point hit in the summer of '90, a reunion picnic under that old oak in the town square, the one where we buried so many dreams and kin. Harlan and I planned it, simple fried chicken and watermelon, but word spread like wildfire, and folks came from miles around, blankets spread under the branches, kids chossing each other while the elders swapped yarns. Susie, now a spitfire of 10 with questions sharper than tacks, tugged at my skirt. Mama, why's Billy look different from me? And the twins, her eyes big as saucers. The secret hovered thick as humidity, but with the women's circle strength in my veins, I gathered the family right there by the creek, the water murmuring soft encouragement. Harlan took my hand, his calluses rough but steady, and we told them all no more hiding about Grandpa's dodge of the draft, the forged letters about Susie's real daddy, a fleeting comfort in hard times, about how lies had near broke us, but truth could mend. The kids stared, first shocked, then weeping, Billy punching the air, saying, damn it, Mama, why'd you keep that locked up? But Mary hugged Susie tight, saying, blood's just water, love's the glue that sticks. Harlan knelt by the girl's tears, tracking down his cheeks. I ain't your blood pop, but I'll be your daddy till the cows come home if you'll have me. Susie buried her face in his shirt, nodding fierce, her little arms squeezing like vines, and the weight lifted darling, floating away on the breeze, leaving us lighter than we'd been in years. The picnic turned to laughter, then songs round the guitar strumming old tunes like This Land Is Your Land, reminding us we'd weathered Vietnam storms, the oil shocks, the factory closings, and come out kin, not just by birth, but by choice. From their victories stacked like cordwood small, but sure keeping the home fires burning. Billy graduated trade school in '92, wrench in hand, heading to the plant full-time, his pride swelling a toad in spring rain. Mary married a good fella from the next county over the wedding in our backyard, with Grace toddling as flower girl, her giggles ringing sweeter than bells. Susie bloomed into a whiz at school, joining debate club, arguing circles around the boys, her questions now tools for understanding, not weapons of doubt. Harlan and I even scraped for a down payment on a little house in '94. Nothing fancy but solid walls and a garden patch where I planted tomatoes red as rubies reminded me of Mama's victory days. 90s brought boom times, jobs plentiful, the recession of faded memory on the newsreels, replaced by stories of dot-com wonders and peace dividing the world. We volunteered at the Center Harlem fixing bikes for the kids I teaching young mamas to sew quilts from scraps, turning rags to riches one stitch at a time. Secrets healed into stories shared at family suppers, no more whispers, just lessons wrapped in love like presents under the tree. One evening as the sun set gold over the fields, Harlan pulled me onto the porch, swinging his arm round my shoulder saying, "Etta, we did it, darling, bent like reeds in the gale, but here we sit unbroken." I leaned into him, breathing in the scent of oil and earth, knowing resilience wasn't magic, just showing up day after day for the fight worth wagging. And oh, the forgiveness that flowed free as sweet tea at a church social. It mended more than family, it healed the town too. We'd host barbecues, drawing in neighbors who drifted during the hard years, sharing plates of ribs and beans, talking about how Vietnam took our boys but gave us grit, the recession stripped our wallets but taught us sharing. Susie even started a youth group, writing letters to soldiers in the Gulf like we did back in the day, keeping the home front strong, no lies, just honest hope. Grace grew asking questions about great-grandpa's Dodge, and I'd tell her straight, honey, he was scared like we all get, but fear don't define you. Choice does, and your grandma chose love every time. The peaks of joy came frequent, now birthdays with cakes tall as the sky, holidays with kin crammed round the table, singing carols off-key, but true-hearted. Harlan took up whittling again, carving little soldiers for the grandkids, not as war toys, but reminders of peace won through tears. Life wasn't perfect, darling, aches and losses still nipped at the heels, but resolution settled deep. A quiet peace like after a rain, when the rainbow arches wide, promising brighter tomorrows. Oh, honey, now that the storms have passed and the sun's been shining steady on our little patch of Georgia clay for nigh on 30 years, I find myself rocking on this porch more often than not, letting the memories wash over me like gentle rain on a tin roof. 82 ain't just a number, darling. It's a lifetime stitched together from threads of joy and sorrow thick as the quilts Mama taught me to make back in those Victory Garden days. Sitting here with a lap full of grandbaby's toys and a cup of coffee gone cold, I look back on it, all the heartbreaks that buckled my knees, the secrets that gnawed like termites, and the resilience that pulled me up time and again, wondering how one old gal like me got to be so blessed in the end. Life's a winding road, full of potholes and detours, but it's the views along the way, the kin who walk beside ya that make the journey worth every blister. I've seen America change from the radio crackle of FDR to the glow of these smarty pants phones. The kids can't put down, but through it all, one thing holds true. We're a nation of fighters, folks, who roll up our sleeves and say, well, shoot, we'll figure it out together. Thinking on the early days, those 40s when the world was at war, and we little ones played at being heroes in the dirt, I see now how it shaped my bones. Ration books and scrap drives weren't just chores. They were lessons in making do, sharing what little we had, so no one went without. Mama's face lit up, telling me we can do it, Etta, just like Rosie. Her hands blistered from the garden, but her spirit unbowed. That grit carried me through the post-war bloom when Daddy came home. Not the hero I dreamed, but a man haunted by choices he could not make. The secret of his draft dodging hung over us like a summer cloud, but even in the hurt, it taught me truth's a double-edged sword, cuts deep, but clears the fog, letting the light in. If I'd known sooner, maybe I'd have judged harsher, but age softens the edges. Darling shows you folks are just fumbling through the dark, same as you trying to protect what they love, even if it means bending the facts a mite. America's like that too, ain't it? Fought the good fights in Europe and the Pacific, but back home we had our own battles. Jim Crow laws linger like bad smells, women pushing for rights in the kitchens and factories. We bent, didn't break, rising from the ashes of depression and war to build suburbs and highways, dreaming big under that red, white, and blue. The struggles, those meaty middle years, they tested me fiercer than any storm, but looking back, I wouldn't trade them for a pot of gold. Listen, Tommy in Vietnam, that telegram still echoes in my dreams. The sharp knock, the words that stole my breath, but his sacrifice wove him into the fabric of our country's story. Millions of mamas wept like me, sending sons to jungles and deserts fighting for freedoms we sometimes take for granted. The protests, the divisions, they tore at the seams, but out of that chaos came voices demanding change, civil rights marching on Washington, women burning brows for equality. My own family mirrored that mess. Harlan's drinking, the recession squeeze, the secrets spilling like beans from a tip pot. Susie's birth, the affair that burst her, shamed me deep, carving guilt into my soul, but confessing it freed us all, showed the kids that love don't need a bloodline to run true. Harlan's return, his sober eyes pleading forgiveness, that was a peak of grace, darling, reminding me marriage is work, a daily choosing to hold on when the wind howls. The trailer days, cold suppers, and bill collectors at the door, they humbled me, taught the value of a neighbor's pie or a church handout. In the 80s, when Reagan talked morning in America, the shine fell far off for us factory folk, but we scraped by community centers and soup lines, holding the line like soldiers in a foxhole. Resilience wasn't born in ease, it forged in fire, the kind that tempers steel, making it stronger, less likely to snap. Gratitude floods me now like the river after a good rain for the turns that led to resolution, the women's circle that stitched my heart back whole, the picnic under the oak where truths tumbled out and hugs sealed them in. Seeing Billy wrenched deep in engines, his laugh booming like his daddy's merry with a family growing roots deep in the soil. Susie arguing her way to college, her mind sharp as a tack. Those were the rewards, darling, proof that hard roads lead to higher ground. Harlan and I growing old together, his hand in mine on the swing, showering quiet sunsets. That's the real victory, not fame or fortune, but a life shared, scars and all. America's triumphs echo in that too. The 90s boom lifting boats from the recession's muck. The internet connecting us across miles, the walls coming down in Berlin, showing walls and our hearts can tumble too. We forgave not just each other, but the past grandpa's lie became a story of fear, conquered the wars, losses, badges of honor, not burdens. Hope's the thread that ties it, darling, the belief that tomorrow holds more light than shadow, that our choices ripple out, touching lives we never meet. I voted in every election, from Kennedy's promise to Obama's hope, watching the country wrestle with itself, but always inching toward better equal rights for all, no matter color or creed, the environment calling us to steward the land like mama's garden. Lessons learned sitting here with the fireflies, winking like old friends. Life's too precious to hoard secrets. They fester and poison. Let them breathe, turn them into bridges, not walls. Family ain't perfect, darling. It's messy, full of arguments and makeup hugs, but it's the anchor in the gale, the folks who show up when the world's gone sideways. Cherish the small joys, the biscuit steam rising the child's hand in yours, the neighbor's wave over the fence. There's the real wealth outshining any stock ticker or fancy car. And resilience, oh, that's the crown jewel learned from World War II's, rationing Vietnam's grief, the recessions that stripped us bare. It's choosing to stand again, not because you're unbreakable, but because giving up ain't in the blood. We Americans got that in spades, from the pioneers crossing plains to the miners striking for fair pay. We've bent under tyrants and tariffs, but sprung back tall, telling tales round the campfire of how we made it through. My grandkids listen wide-eyed to these yarns, asking, "Great-grandma, did you cry a lot?" And I say, "Honey, tears water the soul, make the roots grow deep, but laughter's the sunshine that makes them bloom." One last peak, darling, tugs at my heart even now. The day Grace, my great-grand, brought her first young'un home, a boy with Tommy's blue eyes and Harlan's crooked grin. We gathered round the bed queen and clucking the room full of new life, promising the cycle turns joy from sorrow like seasons from fall to spring. That's the legacy we leave, not perfection, but persistence, the will to love fierce and forgive free, building a family, a country stronger for the storms weathered. So if this rambling tale stirred something in you, a memory or a tear, or maybe a chuckle at my old ways, do me a solid, honey, share it with your own kin. Pass it along on those fancy apps or over coffee with a friend. Stories connect us, darling, weave us tighter than any flag, reminding no one's alone in the hurt or the healing. Life's a gift, wrap it up in gratitude and give it wings, you hear? God bless and keep y'all till we meet again in the sweet by and by.